So I've made quite a few videos in the past with tips and tricks generally geared towards players who are just starting up the game for the first time. There's so much to learn with New Horizons, but it goes beyond the more basic gameplay elements too. There's actually a lot more to New Horizons than you might expect, so I asked all of you for some advanced gameplay tips and advice that you wish you had known sooner. There were honestly too many good answers that I couldn't include them all, but I've managed to narrow it down to 15. So let's check out some pro tips that you'll definitely want to know about Animal Crossing New Horizons. Starting us off, if you're not sure whether you've donated something to Blathers already or not, you can first of all, when you're catching something, see if the yes comes up, but also you could actually check your Critterpedia to see if there is a stamp by the thing that you want to donate. If that museum stamp is there, then you'll know you've already donated it and you don't have to waste your time talking to Blathers. No offense Blathers, but you know, you do kind of go on and on a bit sometimes. I guess that's why he's called Blathers, I had never really thought about that before. Next, did you know that you can actually move your mailbox wherever you want? You'd be surprised how many people don't know about this. You can actually pick up your mailbox and put it anywhere on the island. Now personally, I do think it's best to have it by your house so that it's nice and convenient. You can check your mailbox right as you load up the game, but if you want it somewhere else for aesthetic reasons or whatever other purpose you might have, then you could definitely make good use out of moving your mailbox to somewhere else on the island. Of course, you can't just pick up your house itself and move it wherever you want. You'd have to go to resident services and sort that out. So I understand why a lot of people thought that the mailbox was just kind of a part of it and it wouldn't be movable. But nope, it is its own separate item and you can put it somewhere else. New Horizons was actually the first time we've ever been able to do this in an Animal Crossing game, so I think it's a really cool feature. For number 3, crops are one of the absolute best ways to make bells in the game without really a need for luck. In some of my other videos, we've mentioned other ways to make bells like donating sea creatures and stuff, which is definitely good, but crops can be fantastic as well. As you progress in the game quite a bit and you manage to get a lot of crops on your island, something I highly recommend you do because you can turn them into meals and of course you get Nook Mile rewards for doing all that kind of stuff too. They can also be a great source of bells in the game. If you water them every single day as they're growing, then you'll get the maximum of 3 per crop, so you'll really be maximizing how many bells you can get out of this. Leaf will of course sell them on Harvey's Island if you've managed to unlock his store over there, or you can just wait until he comes and visits you. I believe you could also steal some crops from Capon Islands too, that's another way of getting them. So yeah, I highly recommend populating your island with crops as soon as you can. Another thing people don't seem to know that I'm going to include in this same tip is the fact that you can actually just replant your crops that you've already harvested. You don't need the starts to get new crops. So let's say you've already grown a pumpkin, you can just plant that pumpkin back in the ground and it will act like a start. I honestly love all the crops and I highly recommend filling your island with them. Next, if you have the Happier Paradise DLC, then this tip is for you. Now, whilst the unlock requirements are a little bit foggy, I believe once you've spent enough in the shop in the Happier Paradise Planning building, you'll actually be able to unlock Wardells Special Shop, and this has to be the best shop in the entire game. It'll basically give you every single item that you've used within a Happier Paradise build, and that's amongst a ton of other cool things too. Now, whilst you can't find items in here that you craft yourself, you can get so many different ones, and honestly some of the best items in the game. I honestly think that the DLC is genuinely worth purchasing for this feature alone. It is really crazy. Whether you love to design your island or you just want to collect every type of item, then this shop is a must-have. I made a YouTube short about this one recently and it shocked me just how many people had no idea that this shop existed at all. It completely blew their minds that this was in the game, so I just had to include this one in a video. So many of you commented this one, so thank you for mentioning it. It's a really important one to know. Of course, it is a shame that it does require the DLC, but I highly think it's worth it if you do have a way of getting it. Speaking of the DLC has a lot more to it than most people expect. It isn't just about decorating. There are a ton of different unlocks that you can get for it aside from Wardells Shop. For example, there are special shops that you can unlock there where you can purchase extra clothing per day. You can also get an extra DIY recipe bottle from the beach. You can get special glowing moss from the cliffs and vines to bring back to your island. You can get a cooking recipe almost every day from the chef of the restaurant. There are so many different unlocks and special things that you can get just by having the DLC and making progress. So yeah, if you are able to get it, I really do recommend it. Back to our own island, if you decide to wish upon a star, on your own, then you can get up to 20 star fragments. So even if you wished upon 100 stars, the maximum that you'll get on your beach the next day will only be 20. However, there is a caveat to this, because if there's another player on your island wishing for stars too, for every 5 wishes that they make on your island, you can get another 20 star fragments as well. That means that in total, you can get up to a maximum of 40 star fragments per wishing session. Now, you'll probably still want to do a lot of wishing regardless of how many you get in the end, because there are Nook Mile rewards for doing so, and there's some decently high numbers, so I still recommend doing it anyways. But if you've already done that and you just want to get the maximum amount of star fragments, then I highly recommend inviting over a friend so you get even more, because of course, they too will get the star fragments on their beach the next day also. It's really a win-win situation for everyone, and honestly, who doesn't love wishing on stars? Speaking of meteor showers, of course Celeste plays a big part in these, and you can often find her wandering around your island during these, and she'll actually give you a special DIY recipe for some of the zodiac items in the game. Now, if you want to know if Celeste is actually going to visit your island that particular day, because she also visits some days where there aren't the proper meteor showers too, then what you can do is actually head into the roost between 5 to 7 PM and see if she's sitting down at the bar. In the video clip I'm showing you, she's actually just sitting down at the tables. That's because I invited her via an amiibo. I couldn't get lucky enough to get her in the actual roost at the bar, but yes, if she's up at the bar itself where Brewster is, then that means she will be visiting your island that day. Just keep it in mind that you've got between 5 and 7 to do this. Next, dropped not placed items that don't appear naturally around your island will negatively impact your 5-star rating, and 15 or more will give your island the messy classification. This includes things like drop tools or others like the heart crystals. Whilst they might look pretty for decoration, if you're trying to get that 5-star island, you probably don't want to have too many of these around, as they will negatively impact your island. Now, if you can actually display them as items themselves, it's a different story. Moving on, if you want to get every type of bug in the game, then it's highly recommended that you keep stumps around your island. A lot of people feel like they have to dig these up right away because they aren't always the most aesthetically pleasing, but nope, you really want to keep those stumps. There are certain bugs that will only spawn through them, so if you're missing something and you just can't figure out why you can't get it, then I would definitely recommend having lots of stumps around. The more that you've got, of course, the more chance that you might end up finding something, so really, you should keep some of those stumps around. Speaking of bugs and fish and catching critters, you can actually customize your tools to reset their usage. If a tool is about to break after a certain amount of uses, and it doesn't matter what tool this is, as long as you can customize it using your crafting bench, you'll actually reset its usage. You can basically just keep doing this to get Unbreakable Tools, although you will need to keep track of how many uses it had, and of course have those customizable kits. Still, a really useful tip if you're sick of your tools breaking. Now we're moving away from the game to go to the NookLink App, which is a part of the Nintendo Switch Online app that you can download for your smartphone. This app is directly connected to Animal Crossing New Horizons, and a lot of people don't know about it, but it's full of all kinds of really great features that will help improve your gameplay. There's stuff here like special unlocks that you can get using the currency in the app and bring them over to your game. There's a keyboard that you can use to directly type to your friends in the game when you're playing online. And there's the amazing island newsletter, which will let you know about all kinds of stuff going on around your island, as well as giving you a turnip tracker, which is probably one of the most underrated features that exists. If you don't have this downloaded, then you should definitely get it as soon as you possibly can. It is a must for Animal Crossing New Horizons players. Back to Happy on Paradise, although you actually do this one through your island, once you've completed 30 homes within the DLC, you'll actually be able to change your villager house exteriors and interiors on your own island. So many people still don't know about this one, but it is probably one of the best unlocks that you can get in the entire game. If you really don't like how your villager houses look because they just don't match with your island's vibe, then you can actually change them up through resident services by talking to Tom Nook, which is such a great feature, honestly. I absolutely love it. Now, this next one probably will happen to you fairly on in the game, but I still think it's really important to know about. Did you know that your first camper on your island ever will always be a smug villager, and you're actually forced to take them? This is kind of the game's way of having a tutorial for the campsite. It teaches you about inviting a villager and such. And yeah, sadly, whoever your first camper is, no matter who they are, you will have to invite them. And like I said, no matter what, there will always be a smug villager. I often notice when I'm starting up a new file and maybe I'm streaming it or something, people assume that any villager type could be your first camper, but nope, it will always be smug. That does mean you could get someone really cool like Raymond or Marshall, but then again, you might also get someone like Chop, so it's a very double-edged sword, sadly. Now, again, this could really happen to you at any point in the game, but I still think it's one worth mentioning. If you see a balloon floating around your island, you need to be really careful about where you pop it. If your island is populated with weeds and lots of different flowers, or you've got lots of rivers and water features around, then be careful where you pop it, because if it lands somewhere where the ground isn't a clear space, it will actually despawn and disappear, which is quite funny honestly. Your character will react to this, and I do think you even get some kind of Nook Mile reward for it, although correct me if I'm wrong on that, so it can be fun to do sometimes. But if you want to get those balloon rewards, which you know, could contain things like fairly rare DIY recipes and such, or a lot of bells, then you probably don't want to lose them over the water, so it's recommended that you try and find a clear space to pop them with your slingshot. Good luck with those balloons. Finally, did you know that you can have up to 5 wasp nests on your island at any given time? And if you know where they are, you can actually avoid these trees specifically. All you really need to do is go around finding the trees that have the wasp in them, shake them, and once the wasp falls out, you just reset your game, grab that tree from wherever it was, and put it somewhere that you know about. You can do this 5 times over to find all of the wasp trees, and then put them somewhere where you know they are so you won't get stung if that's something you're worried about. Although personally, I do think it can actually be worth getting stung sometimes, because either you could try and catch the wasp and sell it for a lot of bells, or you could get that wasp's nest as well, which sells for a decent amount, and then you can use to get medicine too. So there's definitely reasons to have wasps around your island, but if you really are just sick of them and want to avoid them, then this is a trick that you could use to avoid them completely. So yeah, that has been 15 advanced tips that you'll wish you knew sooner in Animal Crossing New Horizons. You'll have to let me know in the comments section down below what other advanced tips you have as well to share them with the player base. We can use the comments section to learn even more knowledge about this game that we all love so much. If you made it to the end, be sure to comment Bob's Gang down below so I know you did. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on channel notifications for more videos.